Welcome. So in the previous lesson, we have configured the one node Galera cluster running MariaDB server. Now let's go ahead and repeat the same exercise on other two nodes where we will add the other nodes into the existing cluster. Let's go ahead, and we have already stopped the MariaDB service. Now let's go ahead and create this file, the cluster configuration file on the other two nodes. Okay, let me go ahead, actually let me do only on one so you can do on the other, or either way. Let's go ahead and copy this, Control C, go ahead on node 2, Control V, and here I Control V, but in this case this should be 3, and I'll change the IP address here, and let me go ahead and do the node 2, right? So let me go ahead and save. Let me say IP address. IP address for this one is this guy, right? Ethernet 0. Control C. Let's go back to the node 2 and change it here. That should be replaced with this IP address, this one, and everything else should be the same. It is MCNC and node MCN2. Similar way, let me go ahead and run the IP address, and that should be this guy. Control C, go ahead and replace that IP address. Okay, Control V, and the name of this node should be MCN3. Everything else should stay the same. Let me go ahead and save it. Let me do on the second one, not this one. We will not run this. We already know by now. Now let's go ahead and start the MariaDB service as we regularly, as normally we do. Okay, once this should start MariaDB.service, because it is going through all this configuration file, and once it is set up, you run this on the node 1 again, the service. Now the status should say that now the cluster size is 2, right? And the status is primary, and if you run the same command on this node, it should say the same. Let me go ahead and do the same on the other one. Let's go ahead and start this one, and now while it is starting, you run this before we even know the cluster size is 3 now, because the service has been started. Okay, now we can come back here. Now we can come back here. Now we can stop MariaDB here, because we had did the, let me show you status. In the status is saying that this is a new cluster, right? Because we did the bootstrapping. Okay, let me go ahead and stop it. Stop on the one where we did the bootstrapping. Okay, and followed by start as regular as we normally do. Now this should not only look on the one, but it should look on all the the group communication nodes. Now if you come any of the node here, if you come any of the node and you just type show cluster status, and regardless of which cluster node you are in, the size should be 3. Okay, the size should be 3, and each of them, each of the cluster member, I believe it is select star from MySQL dot, what is that, MySQL.ws rep cluster members, if I remember correctly, right there. Each one of them is, you know, a separate cluster UUID, and they all belong to the same cluster, and they all will have, and even if you just type cluster, I believe only cluster, and now you can see that we have a cluster. You run this here or you run on the any node, we should have the same answer. Okay, so this is what is called adding a node to existing cluster. Now I have shown you from scratch from the first node. Before actually even did that, I split it up the MySQL from the MariaDB cluster. Now as a DBA, this will actually make you a strong DBA. Why? Because you know what you are doing. You have a full control on which portion. Right now, if you will remove this cluster.conf file, you restart this MySQL, you have your standard MySQL server running without any knowledge of cluster. Okay, so this will solidify the knowledge that you have, and this is how you will add actually a cluster configuration to an existing node. You will add a node to existing cluster, and now you know how to bootstrap it. So this lesson will complete setting up a Galera MariaDB cluster on a 3 active where all nodes are primary of a cluster. And for the next one, I will see you in the next lesson.